Asian culture, when you eat in a group at a restaurant, you never split the bill. Someone offers to pay, and then you are meant to fight that person for the bill. I will pay. No, I will pay. I will pay. No, I will pay. But in the Australian culture, if you eat with friends in a restaurant, you always split the bill. And if someone offers to pay, you let them. Now, I'm an Asian brought up in Australia, so I can choose which culture I want to be in. And so when I go with my Asian friends to a restaurant and someone offers to pay, that's when I choose to be Australian and I let them. And it's always interesting trying to navigate two cultures. And that's what it's like for us as Christians, because we have been called by Jesus to be of the kingdom of Jesus, but at the same time, we have been called to be in the public secular space. So how can I, as a Christian of the kingdom of Jesus, navigate the public secular workspace? This conference is called Disruption, and it's all about how to thrive, flourish, and survive in a world which is now disrupted, and how can we disrupt the disruptors? Because things have changed. So let me suggest a few things. First, we have to understand that the storyline has changed, so we too have to change the way we tell the story. When I go to the Sydney cricket ground, I love the Mexican wave. You sit there in the Sydney cricket ground, and sooner or later the Mexican wave starts. People start, they stand up, they cheer, arms go in the air, rubbish goes in the air, and the Mexican wave goes round and round and round until it hits the member stand, and they do nothing. And then the whole crowd just boos the member stand, boo! And they do that chant where they say members are bankers. I think that's what they're saying. You're a bit confused, like, how bankers members anyway? But one day, a friend of mine invited me to be in the member stand. So then we're sitting there in the member stand, and then the wave starts, and it's going, and it's coming closer and closer, and you just feel the panic in the member stand. What are we going to do when it hits us? And then it comes to us, and we all just sit there in terror and fear, and we do nothing. And then 50,000 people boo you. Boo! And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have become that guy. 50,000 people are booing me. And that's what it feels like to be a Christian now in the public secular workspace. We have become that guy because of a variety of issues, and there's panic, there's fear and terror. What do I do? Why has this happened? It's happened because the Western storyline has changed. Because this is the new Western storyline. It goes like this. We used to believe in God, yeah, but then we also used to believe in witches, fairy godmothers, and unicorns. And then, boom, the Enlightenment happened, and it set us free to be ourselves. We could think for ourselves. And so we reject other forms of authority. We reject tradition. We reject government. We reject what our parents tell us to do. And we especially reject what the church tells us to believe. Instead, I have to have the courage to be me, to be true to myself, to be real, to be authentic. I have to ignore what other people are trying to tell me to do, and I just have to have the courage to be real and to be me, because I can be no other. And so when a Christian comes along and tries to tell you about Jesus, this is what it feels like. They are threatening to take you back to the dark ages, back to the witches, the fairy godmothers, and the unicorns. Instead, you have to have the courage to be you and not let them tell you who to be. So we need to come up with new ways of telling the Christian story. If you're a Caucasian Westerner, the first thing you notice when you hit a university in Australia is this. Wow, there are Asians everywhere. There are so many Asians in this university. How did this happen? And then you go to a Christian group on campus, And it's even more Asians in the Christian group, and you will be the only white guy in the Christian group. You think, how did this happen? How? Because Christianity in the Asian storyline represents freedom. Jesus comes to set you free. If you're an Asian and you discover Jesus, you are set free from the Asian cultural storyline. You are set free from the fear, darkness, and superstitions of Asian religions. You are set free from the status anxiety of your parents. You are set free from the obsession with success in the Asian storyline. Jesus sets you free. So by and large, as an Asian, if you find Jesus, life is better for you. You look at your Asian friends who aren't Christians yet, life is worse for them. They still have fears, darkness, superstitions. They have status anxiety, the drive for success. Jesus sets you free from that. But if you're Caucasian Australian, life is not better if you find Jesus. Life is worse. Jesus will come and take away your freedom. He will impress you and impose his laws and constructs upon you. That's what it sounds like to a Caucasian. If you're not a Christian and you're a Caucasian, you look at your Christian Caucasian friends, life is worse for them. You don't want that. You don't want that oppression. And so when a well-meaning Christian tries to tell you, you are running life your own way, you need to stop that and you need to submit to Jesus. What they're telling you might be true, what they're telling you might be biblical, but it might not be the best first step to engage you in your storyline. That sounds like fear and oppression that they're trying to give you. You're thinking, no thank you, I want to keep running life my own way where I am free. So we need to discover at least new ways of giving biblical truths, because that way is true, it is biblical, but it's probably not the best first step in the Western storyline. So a new way might be to say this: we all want to be free. I wanted to be free, but whatever I lived for was owning me. We all have to live for something, otherwise we've got nothing to live for, but whatever we live for will own me. If I live for my work and look for success and status in my work will own me and it will destroy me. And if I use my family to give me success and respect, if I use my family to be my trophy family and I project my fears and insecurities upon them, I will destroy them. So whatever I live for will either destroy me and own me, or I will destroy it. But Jesus comes and sets us free from all that, because he's the good God who's given us good gifts to enjoy: work, family, friends. So we can enjoy them as good gifts, but now we don't have to over-invest in them and make them what gives us success, status, and security. Now I get that from Jesus. Now I can enjoy my work and my family as they are. Good gifts from a good God to enjoy. Jesus has set me free. We need to explore different ways of telling Jesus. Show them the joy and freedom there is in the Bible. See, now when you read books like Luke and other books in the New Testament, you find there's a feature where there's a lot of joy in the New Testament. See, if I said to you, I've been married to my wife for 20 years and there's no joy, you'd be shocked. You think that is a problem. And if I said to you, I've known Jesus, but there's no joy, you'd think, hey, you've got a problem. And in the Bible it says everyone who meets Jesus, they receive him with joy. Tell people there's joy in knowing Jesus. There's freedom in knowing Jesus. In Melbourne, I caught an Uber ride just the other night, and the driver, she found out I'm an ordained Christian minister, and then she found out I'm turning 51 next month, and she said, whoa, you look so young. What is it? Is it clean living? No drinking, no smoking? And I said, heck no. I love my beer. I'm a home brewer. Oh, I love my beers. And then I said to her, and she was a bit shocked, I said, you know, Jesus' very first miracle was turning water into wine. And she said, I had never thought of that. And I said, yes, and if you have a look at the Bible, and especially in the original, in the Greek, the reason they ran out of wine in the first place was the guests were drunk. They were drunk. Jesus had no business giving them more wine. He would have failed his responsible server of alcohol test. But Jesus gives them more wine and good wine and the best wine they ever had. And I said to her, do you know why? Not just that he wanted them to have a good time, but it was a symbol for his kingdom. This is what life will be like in his kingdom. There'll be luxury, beauty, abundance, and joy. There is a freedom in knowing Jesus. And she said, Lord, tell me more about this Jesus. We need to show them Jesus comes to set you free. That's why Jesus has come. So we need to learn new ways of explaining Jesus in our current storyline. The second thing we need to learn is this. We live in 3 spaces. Now, we've been taught we live in 2 spaces, a private and public space, a sacred and secular space, but actually it's wrong. We actually live in 3 spaces. This is what the spaces are. The first space is this. It's the private sphere. And then we have a second one. It's called the freedom assembly sphere. And then we have a third space, and it's the public sphere. So in the private sphere, I'm allowed to believe and do whatever I want to do in the privacy of my own home. And then in the freedom of assembly sphere, I'm free to meet with people who have the same beliefs and behaviour as me. And then we have a public sphere where we mix with people of all faiths, all traditions, all cultures, and all beliefs. So let's say I am Asian lactose intolerant. 90% of Asians are lactose intolerant. So in the privacy of my own home, I am Asian, I'm lactose intolerant, I don't do dairy. Then I have a freedom of assembly. I can form a club with other Asian lactose intolerant people. So if you're not Asian, that's all right, but you have to find another club. If you want to eat dairy, that's all right, more power to you, but you can't be in our club because this club is exclusive. It's only for Asian lactose intolerant people. But then there's a public sphere, the food hall, where you got to mix with people of all diets, gluten-free, vegetarian, meat eaters, dairy eaters, and lactose-free. You all have to exist together with your multiple diets. Let's say in the privacy of my own home, I believe AFL is the best sport in the world. So then I have a freedom of assembly sphere where I only meet with other AFL players and we play AFL. So if you want to play soccer or rugby, more power to you, but you got to play somewhere else because this is an AFL club. But then there's a public sphere where you got to share your playing fields with the soccer players, the rugby players, and for the Asians, ping pong, because it's not a contact sport, it's safe. And you play AFL. So you have 3 spheres. So in the privacy of my own home, I might believe Jesus is Lord. I might believe I have to be faithful, monogamous to my wife. And I can have a freedom of assembly sphere where I meet with other people who believe Jesus is Lord. And we too have to be faithful, monogamous to our wives. And if you don't want to believe Jesus is Lord, more power to you. But you can't meet in our freedom of assembly club. You have to find another club. And then there's a public sphere where we have to meet with people of all faiths, cultures, traditions, and beliefs. Different views on sex, morality, and Jesus as Lord. So what am I meant to do in these spheres? Well, in the public sphere, Christians, there are 2 mistakes. One mistake is made by Christians by saying, well, in the public sphere, I should be able to enforce my beliefs because Jesus is king. He's king of everyone. So I should be able to force people to also have Jesus as king. But that doesn't work. But Jesus said to his followers, you are to persuade, not coerce. An example given by John Lennox is that story when they came to arrest Jesus in the garden and Peter pulls out his sword, chops off the ear of the high priest's servant, and Jesus goes, Peter, why did you have to do that? Peter, put away your sword. And then Jesus bends down, picks up the guy's ear, puts it back on. And there and then Jesus is telling his followers that they are not to use the sword. We do not coerce people into belief. Instead, we persuade. So the public sphere is a place where we persuade but not coerce belief. But there's a second mistake. And that's made by especially people who are hardcore secularists who say the public sphere should be neutral. It is a neutral sphere. And that is naive at best and dishonest at worst, because how does that work? Because in the public sphere, I have to be an Asian Australian. This is who I am. I am a product of my faith, culture, traditions, and beliefs. I can't leave behind my Asian Australianness in the public sphere. We cannot be neutral. How can I be neutral? I am Asian Australian. And to say it can't be neutral is to be like the Americans you meet. And so if you're an Australian and you go to America, the first thing they say to you is this: "Oh, wow, I love your accent." And then they say to you, "Do I have an accent?" And you think, "Oh my goodness, they think they have no accent, like they are neutral." And it gets worse than that. I met a guy from California who said the reason why, and he said the Californian accent is neutral. There is no accent, and that's why they make movies in Hollywood. So there is no accent. So all the movies coming out of Hollywood, the whole world hears with no accent. That's what he told me. So he thinks the American accent is neutral and normative. So that's like someone in the public sphere saying it should be neutral. No, buddy, you have an accent. You just can't hear it. And you can't impose your accent on mine as if there is no accent. It is not a neutral space. Peter Fitzsimons, and I love what he says, he argues that the Australian national anthem should be, "We are one, but we are many." We are one and we are many, because I think this sums up what Australia really is. We are one nation, but we are many. Many cultures, traditions, and beliefs. And that's what the public sphere is. We are many faiths, cultures, traditions, and beliefs. And you can't ask us to stop being who we are in the public space. Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, we celebrate what they do, but they are who they are because of their faith, culture, traditions, and beliefs. They can be no other. The public sphere flourishes when people act according to their faiths, cultures, traditions, and beliefs. It cannot be neutral. It cannot be normative. We persuade, we don't coerce. But then now you think, well, what do I do with my morals? Am I going to be compromised? Well, no, because this is how it works. In the private space, we are of single morals. So in the privacy of my own home, I am dairy-free, I watch AFL, and I believe Jesus is Lord. And then in the freedom of assembly sphere, again, we're single morals. So when we form our clubs, we stay lactose intolerant, dairy-free, we play AFL, and we believe Jesus is Lord. But in the public space, this is social moral pluralism, where we mix with people with different morals than ours. And our example is Jesus. Because Jesus, in the privacy of his own home, thought Jesus is Lord. And then Jesus, in the freedom of assembly, where he has his 12 disciples, they believe Jesus is Lord. That's what makes them the disciples. But in the public sphere, Jesus mixes with those he doesn't agree with. And the Bible says he was always eating and drinking with tax collectors and sinners. He was eating and drinking with immoral people. And he was doing it so much, he was criticized for it. So the Bible said he was criticized for being a glutton and a drunkard. He was doing too much eating, too much drinking with the tax collectors and sinners. That's what he was being criticized for. But then we might say, but Jesus, haven't you compromised yourself? Haven't you compromised your morals and principles? No, because in your private space, your single morals. In your freedom of assembly space, your single morals. But in this space, you can mix with those who are different from you, with different morals. And Jesus does it so much, he's criticized for it. And we as Christians, if we're going to be criticized for anything, it should be this as well, that we're doing too much eating, too much drinking with those we don't agree with. And interestingly, if you look at the book of Corinthians, Paul makes the same argument. He says, expel the immoral brother from your freedom of assembly. So if they don't share your morals, you expel the church member, because that's a freedom of assembly. And then he says, but you still have to hang out with immoral people, Otherwise, you would have to leave the world. So in the public space, you do hang out with those of different morals from ours. Now, what happens then in the public space and the public secular workspace when we do meet with people of different faiths, cultures, traditions, and beliefs and morals from us? Well, here, we need to hear, understand, and feel what they're saying. Hear, understand, and feel. Now, guys, this is everything you were taught in your pre-marriage counselling. So remember they taught you conflict resolution in your pre-marriage counselling? So when you have a conflict with your wife, do you remember what you were meant to do? You were meant to hear what she said, just repeat her words back at her. And so if my wife says to you, "You are not doing the dishes," all I have to do is say, "Oh, from what I hear you saying, I'm not doing the dishes," just repeat her words back at her. And then you say, "Oh, I understand," and you just summarise her words in your own words, showing that you're performing some sort of high analytical thinking. "I understand how that means I'm not pulling my weight in the house duties." "Oh, that must make you feel blank," and here you just guess an emotion, and it's always going to be anger. "I understand how that must make you feel angry," and just like that, conflict resolved. So my wife caught me saying this advice to some guy friends, and she said, "Oh, if I ever catch you doing that to me." And I said, "Oh, from what I hear you saying." And so we do the same with our friends. So from what I hear you saying, you're for same-sex marriage. I understand how for you it's about human rights, justice, and equality. Oh, so that must make you feel angry when Christians don't share your view. And they will. So it's not just enough to hear, it's not just to understand, but you need to feel the feeling, the emotions they have on these issues. And then when we still disagree, what do we do? Well, here I'm getting this from Andrew Cameron's book, Joined Up Life. And it's also in Andrew Laird's book that we're promoting this weekend as well, that there's a spectrum of ways we can engage in the workplace. We can cooperate, or we can subvert, or we can whistleblow, or we can separate. So let's say I'm a Christian doctor working in a public hospital. I can cooperate. I will do what you tell me to do because we have the same mission. Your mission is to make people better. My mission is always to make people better. I will cooperate. Subvert is where you do what they tell you to do, but you have a different mission from their mission. So as a doctor, I will do what you tell me to do, but your mission is different. Your mission is to cut costs and cut corners on a budget. My mission is to make people better, but I will do what you tell me to do. We can whistleblow, whereas we say, I might do what you tell me to do, but I don't agree with your mission. I don't agree with your ideology, and I'm going to call you out on this. I'm going to tell people. So I don't agree with how long your waiting lists are in this hospital, and I'm going to tell the press about this. And finally, separate is where you say, I cannot do what you tell me to do. I'm out of here. I resign. I'm stopping working as a doctor here. So cooperate, that's Joseph in Egypt, if you think about it. That's Joseph working as a governor in Egypt. Subvert, that's Daniel in Babylon, where he says, I will do what you tell me to do, but I will eat a different diet. You eat your food, but I'll eat my food, but I'll still do what you tell me to do. Whistleblow, I think that's Daniel, where they told him he couldn't pray, and he said, I'm doing it, I'm calling you out, your mission is wrong, I don't agree with the ideology. Separate, that's Daniel's three friends, where they asked to bow down before the statue. They said, that's it, we cannot do it. We separate ourselves at this point. So we have a spectrum of ways we can engage. So how do we work out which is the right one to do? Well, this is where we need wisdom. So the Bible has three categories of knowledge. One category of knowledge is salvation knowledge, how to be saved. Another category is providence knowledge, what to do every day. But there's a third category, and that's called wisdom knowledge. What is the wise thing to do? And wisdom knowledge is summed up in Proverbs, where you have that verse that says, do not answer a fool according to their folly. And then the next verse says, do answer a fool according to their folly. Now I think, which one is it? Don't I? Do I? Don't I? Do I answer the fool? Well, you're going to need wisdom. What is the wise thing to do? Maybe there's not a right or wrong answer, but what is the wise thing to do in this circumstance? So, as a Christian worker in my public secular workspace, do I cooperate? Do I subvert? Do I whistle blow? Or do I separate? Maybe there is no right answer, but there's a wise answer. And we have to work out what is the most apt, most wise thing to do in this situation. And then we look for common ground. Because in theology we believe in common grace, general revelation, image of God. They're three big theology ideas: common grace, general revelation, image of God. And that means all goodness is God's goodness, all truth is God's truth, all beauty is God's beauty. Meaning in every non-Christian culture, tradition and belief, there still will be some of God's goodness, truth and beauty and an image of God in that non-Christian culture that we can find common ground with. According to Reformed theology, and Timothy Keller says it this way as well, because of God's common grace, general revelation and image of God, no non-Christian culture is as bad as we think it is. There is goodness, truth and beauty in it. So take Paul, for example, in Acts 17, when he comes to the idols. He could have gone in there blazing with a whip like Jesus did in the temple. Look at all these idols. How dare you? You have broken the first 2 commandments of the Bible. You guys are wrong. You are guilty. Instead, he looks for common ground. He goes, wow, how about that? You guys have a lot of idols. I see you're very religious. I see you want to worship God. He looks for common ground. And that should be our first step. You guys want safe schools? Oh, that's because you're against bullying. We too, we're against bullying. You're for same-sex marriage because you believe in equality and justice. Wow, we too believe in equality and justice. And strange enough, it's very hard to show the basis for equality and justice unless there is a God and we're all in his image. You want Purple Shirt Day because you want to include people of all traditions and beliefs? We too. We want to be included. Why don't you include us as well? Look for common ground. And then we need humility because we believe in universal human depravity. We're all sinful. We've all found ways to suppress God's truth. That means, according to Timothy Keller, no Christian position is as good as we think it is. There's some brokenness in our position. We've caused hurt, and we need to be humble and to recognize our brokenness, and we need to apologize for the harms that we may have done in the name of Jesus. And then we are to love, pray, and bless. Jesus says, love those who persecute you, pray for those who hate you, and bless your enemies. Just think about it. Jesus said, hey, anyone can love those who agree with them. Anyone can love those of the same position. That's not love. Love is when you love your enemies. Love is when you love those who disagree with you. And pray for them and then bless those who persecute you. Bless them. You know, I have a friend called Rohan, and Rohan became a Christian, and Rohan got baptized, and he sent out invites to his friends and family. And Rohan has an uncle who's an atheist, fiercely anti-Christian, and he's gay. And he turned up to Rohan's Christian baptism. And that moment, no one is saying, oh, look at Rohan's uncle. What is he doing? He's compromising his atheism. What is he doing in here? No, we recognize it for what he is. He has turned up to bless Rohan, to give him honor, give him respect as his uncle. And as Christians, we too can bless those who persecute us. We're not compromising our morals when we do that. We are following Jesus' command, and we're actually following Jesus' example as well. So we've looked at how we can be a Christian in the public secular workspace, and I think the one word that sums up what I'm trying to say here is this. It's hospitality. You know, I never used to notice prams until I went shopping for a pram, and they are everywhere. I didn't realize there were so many prams, and I didn't notice the idea of hospitality in the Bible until I looked for it. The idea is everywhere. Jesus is always eating and drinking in the New Testament, to the point where he's criticized for doing it too much. And then it's in all the other parts of the New Testament. Look for the word hospitality as well as the idea. The word appears in Acts, Romans, the letters to Timothy, Titus, the letters to Hebrew, and then the letters by Peter and John. It is everywhere. Why? Because hospitality provides the space in which we can love, pray, and bless. Hospitality itself is evangelistic, and hospitality provides a space in which the word gifts can flourish. Without hospitality, there are no word gifts that can happen. And so that means for us, we need to look for creative ways to do hospitality. So maybe if you're a doctor, put yourself on the cake roster. It's always the nurses on the cake roster. Why don't you put yourself on the cake roster and look for some creative ways to do hospitality? If you're at work and you're in cubicles, offer to do the coffee run. I'm going to do a coffee run. And then when you turn up, you say, they're on me. Coffee's on me. And the people have to talk to you. You've just bought them a coffee. And then at lunch, people want to work through lunch. They're at their desk and say, hey, let's go for lunch. Let's go for lunch. On me. And no, people want to work through lunch. No, I don't want to work. Well, how about you tell me what you want? You do the lunch orders. You come back. And then you give them their sandwich. And they say, how much? On me. Lunch is on me. Look for creative ways to do hospitality. That's how we survive as Christians in the public secular workspace. And Jesus did so much eating and drinking with tax collectors and sinners, he was criticized for it. And as Christians, if we're going to be criticized for anything, let it be this, that we do too much eating, we do too much drinking with those who disagree with us. Thanks.